Good afternoon, everyone. My name is MacArthur. I'm the Director of the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter, and welcome to the latest in our webinar series. Today, we're looking at age-friendly workplaces, and this webinar is delivered in partnership with the Work and Skills team from the GMCA to help promote the publication of their age-friendly toolkit, which can be downloaded and can be viewed at the Charter website. For those of you familiar with these webinars, I'm going to go through the housekeeping first. Just to say that this platform, Livestorm, works best on Chrome. So if you're trying to view this on another platform, maybe just swap over to Chrome. If you've got any problems with audio or visual through the webinar, just hit refresh and it normally repairs it. On the right-hand side, you'll see of the screen, you'll see a chat and a questions function. Please use the chat to connect with other people, say something nice, say that you're here, connect with other members. When we started this was in place of a networking event, and we found that the chat function allowed people to connect, at least virtually. If you've got questions through the presentation, please use the questions tab. They will come through to me and to the speakers so that we can put those to the panel. Finally, the session will be recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and it will be sent out to, the link will be sent out to all our members and supporters. In time, it will also be on our website with an accompanying blog. So we're talking about age-friendly workplaces today, and long ago, it seems, before the pandemic in February 2020, we held a networking event face-to-face. We didn't have to say it was face-to-face, it was just a networking event back in those days. And we called it Recruitment Through the Ages, and we looked at the challenges of recruiting both young and the older generation. And in fact, it's where I first met Kim, one of our speakers today. And goodness, how the world has changed since then, especially in terms of the labour market dynamics. I heard a figure recently that in the last 2 years, 90,000 workers have left the employment market in the Northwest alone. I mean, the phenomenon of the Great Resignation, coupled with other forces and social resets, means that the context of our conversation today is probably very different, but perhaps not the core messages. So the webinar will focus on the benefits of an age-friendly workforce, how you can bring the best out of your people, but it will also help you understand the economic benefits of having an age-friendly and diverse workforce. It will draw on best practice, and we've got some best practice to share with you today, and also how to access the age-friendly toolkit that's been created by the Work and Skills team in the GMCA in partnership with the Centre for Aging Better. And our speakers, if we can have the slide, please, Raj. So we have Kim Chaplain. Kim's Specialist Advisor for Work at the Centre for Aging Better. And we've Cheryl Lontton, Diversity and Inclusion Manager at Electricity Northwest, a long-standing member of the Good Employment Charter and recent award winner at our awards as well. And again, a long-standing and long-suffering board member of the Good Employment Charter, McKenna, and he's also the Regional Secretary at the Northwest TUC. So welcome all three of you. It's great to have you on the panel this afternoon. So without further ado, I'm going to turn straight to Kim. And Kim, can you maybe set the scene, what the current landscape is for aged employment, and maybe some insights on the toolkit that you've helped develop with the GMCA?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. And in fact, that event that we just talked about, that Ian just talked about, then was the last face-to-face event I went to before lockdown. So it stands large in my mind. So, older workers and the current labour market and the Great Resignation. It's fair to say that since lockdown and since the COVID recovery, older workers have fared less well than other groups. And we know that a significant number of them have left the labour market. I hope it isn't the Great Resignation. I hope it's gone for now, but not gone for good. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, because not only do we see people flowing out of the labour market, what we see is a labour market that has fundamentally changed. There's a lot of difference in the labour market that we see now to the labour market we saw prior to COVID. Good things and bad things, but what we are seeing is a real exploration of hybrid working. We were just talking about that before we began this conference, this webinar, and different responses to hybrid working. So we see employers who really are embracing this and exploring this, and actually thinking about the way they package work differently. And I think that's a good thing for older workers, and I'll come back to that. We also see employers, though, particularly our leaders in the public sector, trying to put the labour market back to where it was before this disruption. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing. And so I hope that one of the reasons why some of the elder workers have departed is that they're just electing not to be part of the maelstrom for now. Let's see where it settles and let's come back. It is really important that they do come back. There's a very good study that was published by OECD in December 2020 that provides clear evidence of the worth of multi-generational workforces and therefore older workers. To GDP, it's just under 20%. So it's really important that we have a balanced workforce on age, and that employers and organisations think about how you can maintain that balance. And at the minute, it's probably it probably needs more attention at the older age range than the younger age range. But what I'm definitely not saying is that older workers should compete with younger workers. This is about actually creating balance. And so with the toolkit and with the sort of thoughts that we have around that, well, the evidence thoughts, it's not just our thoughts, around keeping that balance, there are 5 pillars of activity really that people need to work. Organisations need to think about, and they are really how the toolkit is structured. And what we're looking at really is retention measures and recruitment measures. So the big steer for me, the big message from me to organisations today is try and retain what you've got in terms of age. Think about measures to retain what you've got, and then think about measures to recruit more openly. So you broaden your talent pool and you make sure that in those people that come to you, there is a group of older workers. And in terms of that, then think about flexibility, because flexibility is the one reason we get from older workers about why they're leaving. There are other reasons, but the outstanding reason is that flexibility is a key issue for them. And when we talk about those workers that have left, those older workers that have left but declare they want to come back, flexibility is the single biggest motivating factor that will attract them to come back. And that to me says take age labels off your jobs. Don't think about them as these are the jobs we have for the young workers and the school leavers, and think about how you package work and think about the conversation you have with the individual. Because what the toolkit none of us can give you is, well, this is a flexible job and this is an old job. Actually, what flexibility is tailoring. It's tailoring the work and the productivity you need to the individuals that are available. And that requires a slightly different approach. And I think a lot of organisations are open to that because that's what's been going on through COVID. So that's really important. Then I think in terms of the recruitment practices, just think about being very vocal about offering that flexibility. That is a really important thing in a labour market where we're seeing inflated wages and we're seeing increases. Actually, that offer of work in a flexible package is really important. And I attended a roundtable yesterday that said what's really interesting is the group that have done best out of flexible working appears to be women in white collar work on around 20 grand. So it's not necessarily a middle class thing, but it's certainly that flexibility is something that people value. Health support, really important. Definitely as you get older, we all know, I'm knocking on a bit now. Health doesn't get better, it tends to get worse. So look after everybody's health. But obviously, in terms of being older, health, having the right health support for the right people is really important. Don't forget about career development. All of us want career development, whatever our age. Often older workers get parked. Wrong thing to do. They have talent. They really have a contribution to make. So make sure that you include everybody in your talent management and in your career development. But finally, I think most important, wrap all of those things, wrap those 4 things around an age-positive culture, around those 4 things. And I really haven't got anything more to say at this point, but I'm really happy later to answer some questions about that.
Kim, that's great, a great scene setter. And I think, goodness, every time we talk about a good employment issue, ultimately we come back to the organization's culture and values. And that's so important, and leadership in this space as well, and getting your leaders getting their heads around it. Just a couple of observations about, or maybe a question about flexibility. Is there, because we've been running a series of masterclasses, and we've got a range of toolkits on our website now from TimeWise. We've been working closely with TimeWise about flexible work and the different dimensions of flexible work, because we found a lot of employers kind of, I don't know, maybe June 2020, we're going, hey, we've solved flexible work. Everybody's got a laptop and they're at home and it's cool. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not flexible work. That's just working from home. It's not the same. In fact, lots of people were working way more hours because they didn't have the commute, so they filled it with work. And that's where the mental health issues came, because they moved from breakfast table to the laptop and not taking a break. So all those things. So on the flexibility feedback, Kim, the dimensions that the older generation are looking for, is it about place, is it about time, or is it just a whole mix?
I think it's the mix. There's definitely a piece about place. Do I do it at home? Do I do it in a workplace? There's definitely a piece about technology and how I interact with other people. But most importantly, I think there's a piece about trust and management. Mm-hmm. What am I measured to do? What is my contract with the organisation? And I think as a culture, we in the UK tend to be still measuring jobs in terms of time and hours and presenteeism. And I think what we need to be doing is thinking about, well, what is it I want? What is the interaction? How do I contribute? And how am I managed? And it's probably a little bit more sensitive around older, more experienced workers. The tendency is to worry about, I think, the whole thing about remote working and flexible working and the lack of performance, the whole Jacob Rees-Mogg thing, is not actually a hybrid working issue. You either are a good manager or you're not. Mm. And I've seen people swinging the lead in an office where the manager sits next to them just as much as if they're working remotely. It's about trust, and it's about that contract that you have between the individual and the organisation and the quality of the manager. So I think it's really important to have good managers that feel comfortable managing a hybrid situation. And that is challenging, but it's not impossible, because we've been doing it for the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And that trust thing comes back to that culture and values again, doesn't it? Just an observation, TimeWise with the CA have produced a Greater Manchester Flexible Job Index. And some really interesting stats come from that. 9 out of 10 workers want flexible working in Greater Manchester. 6 out of 10 manage it somehow. Okay, so they've managed it. But only 3 out of 10 jobs are advertised with flexible work. So there's quite a way to go. And the advice we get from TimeWise is you've got to be very specific about the nature of the flexibility you're offering. Don't just say we're open for a discussion on flexibility, because that informs no one of anything. They need to be specific about home working, about hours, about split hours, about maybe a job share. All those things need to be more explicitly explained in job ads. So another interesting piece of work that feeds to the debate.
I think that the interesting thing that I've seen recently is more and more organisations are publishing hybrid working policies. And I think that's a really good framework on which I offer flexibility. I, as an organisation, offer flexibility. And I would really recommend it, because I think otherwise it places all the obligation on the individual to think about that flexibility. And I think if you can set a framework and a context for a conversation between the employer and the employee, that's a really good starting point.
Kim, thanks for now. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions and discussions later on in the 45 minutes or so we've got left. But I'd like to turn to you, Cheryl, now, from Electricity Northwest. Working in a large and very diverse organisation, it must present challenges across, I guess, many aspects of the business, because it's multifaceted. So it'd be great to learn from you firsthand of the sort of challenges you've had and your approach generally to the ageing agenda. It'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah,
thanks,
absolutely. And thank you for inviting me to share what we do at Electricity Northwest. And I think the toolkit is such a great resource. And, there are things that I've looked through and thought, oh, it's really prompted some thinking about some of the things that we can do under those 5 pillars. So thank you for that. So I've got a few slides just to kind of help facilitate my discussion. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Electricity North West and what we do. So basically we own and maintain the Electricity network in the North West. And our role is to transport electricity from A to B, basically. So we take electricity off the national grid, we transform it into lower voltages, and then we can transport it to wherever it's required in the Northwest. So if you're out in the countryside, you might see wooden poles with cables along. That is us. And in more city and built up towns, we've got lots of cables underground. That's what we do. So we've got about 5 million customers that we serve. And it's a really exciting time for us at Electricity North West because we've got some really big challenges coming up. So we're quite instrumental in leading the Electricity North West to carbon net zero. So for us to do that, we require some big changes to the way that we run our networks now. So we need lots of innovation, lots of creativity. And this is one of the reasons why, you know, great talent and great diversity is really important to us, because we know, you know, that's how we are going to achieve those things, by tapping into that great diverse talent. Raj, can I have the next slide, please? So just a little bit about our employee demographic in terms of age. So you can see over 33% of our colleagues are aged over 50. Of these, we've got 21% female and 79% male. We have 9 people in the organisation that's aged over 70. So, and quite interestingly, 31% of our over 50s work outdoors. So they could be in quite manual roles as well. So historically, we have got a good proportion of older generation because we've got a lot of long tenure. So we've got a lot of people who joined our industry as an apprentice and have served a lot of tenure. So we've got a lot of people with 20, 30, 40 years service there. So we have that historically, but over the last 2 years, 17% of people that we've recruited have been over 50. So you know, we had a good build already, but our recruitment practice, you know, kind of favours all ages. Next slide, please, Raj. Okay, so we really do reap the benefits of having an age diverse workforce. So first of all, you know, our customers are diverse in age. We've got, you know, a big range of diversity. So having a workforce that's diverse in age as well helps us to be able to provide and shape a better customer experience. We've got a wealth of knowledge and experience and skills from people. I'm talking about, you know, people who's worked there 20, 30, 40 years. And where we find that particularly helpful is with our apprenticeship scheme as well. So we have a healthy recruitment on our apprenticeship scheme coming in. And I'll talk a little bit about how that works on my next slide with our apprentices. And just generally that life experience, and also in terms of us having a very strong safety culture, experience is really important. You know, so having people who's, you know, got real good experience of working in electricity helps with our safety culture too. Next slide, please, Raj. So I'm not going to go through all these, but under the 5 pillars in the toolkit, I've listed some of the activities and some of the initiatives that we embrace at Electricity North West. So just mention our apprenticeship recruitment. So currently we have got 47 apprentices, and we've just finished a recruitment drive, and we're recruiting 34 new apprentices. Now, how we support our apprentices is by buddying them up with an experienced member of staff. Okay, and this is where having that experience, that older generation, is a really great pairing for us. So, you know, we've got long-standing employers who will take a young apprentice under the wing, and they're a big part of their learning and development. And those relationships are really great to see. There is a dual benefit. So our younger apprentices are learning from all the wealth and experience from our older apprentices. Our older apprentices are also taking the opportunity to learn from our younger generation as well at the same time. So I would also mention our colleague resource groups that we've recently established last year. So we set up a number of colleague resource groups, and one of these was around menopause, and one of these was around disability. And if you think about our organisation, so out of our females in our company, 50% are over the age of 40 of our female dynamics. So we thought it was really important to give this topic some real focus. And these groups work really well because it provides support for people who either have that shared identity or shared experience to come together, but it also helps generate a voice which helps support the business as well. So we can listen to these groups and we can understand, right, what's working great for you, but what's not working great. How as a business can we keep adapting, and we can keep continually improving our inclusivity for these. So these have been a great resource for us recently. I actually had a colleague approach me last week actually and asked me if there's any chance we could look at setting up a group for carers, and he was sharing his experience. So he was in his 50s, but he was talking to me about he's got elderly parents that he looks after and was in actually hospital supporting his elderly parents, but he's also got young adults living at home as well. So he's kind of in that sandwich generation, that generation X, where you've got dual caring responsibilities, and that the majority of people in that generation tend to be late 40s going into 50s. So that's certainly something that we're going to look at as a company, how we can make that happen. And in February, we did a raising awareness piece on generational diversity. So we provided our managers with some resources that they could take into their team briefs. So all our team briefs happen at the same time. So all this learning was going off at the same time across the business. And we gave information about the different generations. So you've got your traditionalists, your baby boomers, your Gen X, Y, and Z. And actually the experience, and what that did was help generate conversations between teams about actually those experiences. And I actually came into the office on the back of a team brief, and people were spilling out, and this conversation was still continuing about people sharing their experiences, what had happened. And my reflection on that was it was really like deep, rich conversation. And I think having those conversations and learning more about each other helps develop respect as well. And on the back of that, obviously, we talked about ageism, we talked about how to be, what positive behaviours look like, to respect all ages in that briefing. But that generated some really good conversations. And just finally, and Kim, just to pick up on what you were saying about hybrid working, it's certainly a practice that's we've evolved with through the pandemic, but it's one that we certainly want to keep going. So 50% of our workforce have got the opportunity to work in a hybrid way. We're still kind of shaping what that looks like, but what we find is it gives that in the moment flexibility. So it's not just about these formal flexible working agreements. It is that in the moment things that just helps all generations with that work-life balance. So we are a big supporter and a big fan of that.
Cheryl, thank you. I'll just endorse what Alice has said in the chat. Amazing to have these practical examples. It brings a conversation to life when someone like you who has to deal with the challenges and sets out how you go about it. One of the things on your final slide was around blind CVs.
Yeah.
Well, it's a challenge, isn't it? How do you go about those?
It is. So we're trying to come away from CVs and have more of an application type of thing. So it totally removes personal details away from the hiring managers who are reviewing CVs. And it's not just about age bias, it's about any kind of bias. So people are just being looked and reviewed against the skills and the experience and the quality that they're bringing to the table, as opposed to any personal information. And it's really positive with us. We've just done a big recruitment for our apprenticeship, and we did that totally blind. And we did actually find that our diversity of the groups was really strong in terms of all diversity that we're looking at. So, we're quite a big fan of doing that, and just to try and reduce that unconscious bias from seeping in.
I think some people on the call might have been at the same event I was at this morning when we worked with the race equality panel, and this issue came up in one of the contributions about, well, if I put my name on a application, they're going to know I'm, not white, I'm not, from this country originally or whatever. They're going to have some sort of bias. And then, okay, even if you anonymize it and you take the name off, they're going to look at my qualifications and they can see they're from the University of wherever, but it's not an English university or a British university. So it's about really thinking about all those indicators, isn't it? Because if you look at my CV, it's long. So you probably have a good guess at my age, even if I don't tell you. So, there's all those sorts of indicators that will give clues away to unconscious bias. So it's how carefully we manage those. And I think, don't know if you remember, Kim, when we had the in-person event and we had the young person speaking about their direct experience and how they can, employers can better improve that sort of interface where, just invite someone in for a walk around the workplace rather than a formal interview across a desk. In fact, if you're going to give them questions, why don't you give them the night before or a week in advance? It's not about catching them out, it's getting the best out of them. So there's all those sorts of tricks that I guess we can transfer into this agenda. Cheryl, I'm sure the questions will come flooding in. If you have got a question, please type it into the question box and we'll put them to the panel at the end. Thanks, Cheryl. Can I come to you, Jay? From a trade union perspective, can you share your, as a trade union, what would your involvement in a workplace be to support both the employees and the employers getting the best out of the available workforce and to kind of drive equity across the age groups?
I think it's lots of what's been said by Cheryl and Kim, really. What strikes me, and I know people are saying this in the chat about those practical examples that we've just heard from Cheryl there and what Kim spoke about in the round. These are about good workplace policies. This is about having a policy that's easy to understand for staff, that's fair, reasonable on both sides, manages expectations and sets some expectations as well. There's a rights and responsibilities things here. A worker gets certain things from work and has to, fulfill certain things. But employers get a lot from older workers, as Cheryl's just touched upon there. I remember when I'll give this as an anecdote. I first started my working life, working in shops and bars, and I learned from older workers. But I remember going to work at the passport office. I was about 17, 18 years of age. And there was a guy who joined our team, George, and he used to work in the fire service, and he'd left, he'd retired, he'd reached an age where he couldn't be on active duty in the fire service, and he just wanted a part-time job, and he come and worked in the passport office. And I could never, as a young person at the time, and feeling much younger than I feel now, but get my head around that someone would, after doing a career job they wanted to do forever, go and do another job. And he brought so much to that team. He learned from us lots about usage of IT. There's lots of jokes we'd all make about, he didn't understand how to use a computer because he'd never had to do it as part of his job. But there was lots he just brought from us, little stories about work and life, little times when he could kind of give you that reassurance about work and life generally, because workplaces aren't just about doing work. They are places where we have these social interactions and you learn from your colleagues, whether that's, how to carry yourself, how to conduct yourself in and out of work. And he was, that experience I got from working on his team, was invaluable. And I think that was because the place we worked had good workplace policies, and they have good workplace policies, as you introduced, Ian, because that is what trade unions do at their best. there's an image sometimes of trade unions within the media, but when it reaches times when there's a dispute, we failed at our job. Our job is to sit down at the table with the employer, as Cheryl's mentioned, relationships with trade unions, and come up with good policies. And often those policies come about because there's been a problem. There's maybe not been a policy that's been able to support older workers, whether that be around sickness, needing time off, disciplinary issues, capability issues. They come up and we begin to spot a pattern and we say, look, there's a bit of a theme emerging here. Is it that we need to provide some more training and support for staff or for managers? Is it that we just don't even really have a policy in place to support people? And I think that's what, that's where it works well here is, trade unions on behalf of their members who are the employees, working with the employer and coming up with good policies that suit everybody. And I think, lots of the experiences I was hearing from Cheryl talking there, and there's a few points that I'll touch upon, are what is needed, what are the good policies that are needed. And I think it is important to say these are policies that will benefit younger workers, policies that will benefit young parents, people needing to take parental leave, maternity leave, people who will get the right support in the workplace. And there was something you said, Ian, that I think, overarched lots of this, the culture and the values of an organisation. What do they do well? How are they looking after their staff and respecting their staff? Now, there's lots of maybe employers on this call, I'm sure, are thinking, do they need all of these policies because of the size of their organisation? Or lots of them, I'm sure, on this are very, very good at what they do and think, well, we've got all of those things. And I think it's our job, with the charter and other things to show to others, well, look, this is what good looks like, or here's a version of good. Not everybody's will be the same, but here are some of the things you should think about. Supporting your staff. Increasingly, people are going to be working longer. The retirement age has gone up, and that's an entirely different political decision, but the retirement age has gone up and people are working longer. That is more likely to bring that, and something we've seen, bring people into a challenging period in which they're working and likely managing a health condition, whether that be an illness or whether that be something kind of quite physical that maybe limits their mobility. There needs to be reasonable adjustments that support staff. In the same way, we would expect that of someone who's maybe younger and facing a disability or an impairment. How do we support people in doing that? And how do you as an employer proactively think about that? And that is, again, examples. I think back to my working life as a trade union rep, and you spot that, you just notice, look, we've got a lot more staff now, we're a bit older. We need to think about, well, what does this look like, in the future? What policies and procedures will we need so that staff feel confident? Because one of the things I think that fits through all of this and how you attract and retain staff has been mentioned on this webinar is, what are your terms and conditions? What is your reward to staff? And that isn't just financial. That's a sense that staff believe they're being recognised for their important role that they play, that they're valued, and that they believe this is a place for them to stay and work. And I know it's a motto of the Metro Mayor, that he wants Greater Manchester to be a place for people, to get on and grow old. That happens in the workplace. People spend most of their lives in workplaces, and good policies like that just give people the confidence that their employer will value them and is there for them. And that brings a lot of respect from staff, that they believe this is a place where I can continue to work for a long time. Increasingly, and he says, as somebody who's got young children, whose grandparents play a caring responsibilities role for us, including today, recognising that caring responsibilities don't no longer just fall on parents for children, or that increasingly maybe an older worker might be caring for a partner, might be caring for children, that those responsibilities will go with them. And it's kind of like there's an arc to this, I think. As you're younger and you start work, you need a lot, support and development and help to progress in your career. You need that just slightly different at the other end of your working life as well. Those caring responsibilities that some people might have assumed are left behind once your children reach a certain age are there now increasingly in work life. And employers are still grappling with this. Not all policies are perfect. It's something we're still thinking about, but how we support people to do that well. I think, we've touched on this, where we work and how. I think in a way there has been a reset because of the pandemic, which has accelerated this conversation, which, for all the very obvious downsides that we've experienced in the last 2 years, there are some positives, which is, I think there's been a recognition that we can do some of these things, that we can find solutions to where and how we work and support people to do that well. And you rightly said, Ian, flexibility is not working from your house, not working at your kitchen table or in an office, or some flexibility is, where and how you work, is the hours you work, is about those early finishes, those late starts sometimes, moving people from full-time to part-time hours if that's what they want, recognizing that there might be times of the year where it's a challenge for some workers to come to work because of health conditions that they might have. I think, having good policies on this that are very clear, that manage and set expectations is pretty good. And I think that's where, that's what staff want. The conflict I've experienced when I've been a trade union rep, and someone comes to me with a problem, and I think about the older workers I maybe have represented, as when they've been managing a health condition. And not everybody wants to go to their employer and say, I've had this health condition diagnosed, or they're investigating for this. And it does impact on them being in work. It does mean, we all know what it's like to try and get a doctor's appointment or a dental appointment, and trying to get them outside of work hours is a challenge. This is the same for people. Your hospital writes to you and says, you can have this appointment at a certain time. You don't get to write back and say, can I have it at 5:30 on a Thursday? The time is the time. And people need to be supported. One, that maybe increase their confidence that they can go to their line manager or, as a member of HR and speak to them and say, I need this time. I appreciate it's not convenient. It might be nothing, but I just need to go and do this. But having that conversation with them. And I think the other important thing for supporting staff through this is thinking about their skills. And I was really pleased to hear Cheryl talk about this. Apprenticeships are not just for older people. The government's Kickstart scheme I thought was useful and vital to support young people during the pandemic. But there are lots of older people who've come out of work, this great resignation, our research shows that lots of older people have come out of work disproportionate to the rest of the working population. They might want to return at some point. They might feel like they need some training and support to re-enter the labour market at some point. They need that help and development and guidance, but also that skills conversation you should have with, kind of workers who maybe are over 50 plus. There is lots, as I said before, and we, Cheryl touched upon, and I give that example working in the passport office. Lots that they can bring to you, lots that when they fill in their application form, and rightly, as has been said, making sure that personal information isn't shared, that can identify according to age. Because I think sometimes we know there are presumptions made that someone who's maybe left the workplace, left their job, and maybe just wants a job for a few years before they do retire, or even in retirement wants a job for a few years. There's sometimes a presumption of, they're not going to stick around long. This is just kind of, money to tide them over. But there's lots they can give to you as an employer in the meantime, lots of skills and experience. And like lots of young people, again, I think there's an arc to this, lots of young people who start a job early in their career and maybe think, this is just going to be a job working in a supermarket or someone for a few years before they go and do what they want to do with the rest of their life. And often you find they stay, they get promoted, they develop, they pick up new roles, they enjoy what they do. The same I've seen happen with older workers, someone who's just wanted a job for a few years and it reaches the retirement age and saying to the employer, I wouldn't mind staying for a little bit longer. I wouldn't mind, doing a little bit more of this because they enjoy it and because they're, living a fulfilled life and a fulfilled working career. So, they're the key issues there about, supporting people in doing that. But it is the policies that you have supporting people in the workplace. And that's what trade unions will try and do to support the employer to do that well. We don't want that conflict. We think, the more people in work, the better. Is important for the economy. It's important for the individuals as well. It's important for trade unions. Let's be honest about this. Our business model is that we support people in work to become members. We want them in work. But I think, you get that really diverse workplace when, across all of the equality characteristics, and age is a really important one in this, that we see the value of what people bring to the workplace, what they bring to employers. And I think, employers who do well with their staff, recognise those things, and they have good policies. And it, not everything has to be the lengthy policies that I've seen in some workplaces, but just being clear with your staff when you're recruiting them, when you're advertising for roles, that, flexible work will be available. We will manage health conditions. We will make the adjustments that are needed because there is a value in all of the staff you bring in, whatever the issues are that might need managing, including age or disability and things like that. So, I'm just to say, I'm really pleased that the toolkit looks fantastic. I'm going to read again a bit before today. It really sets out some practical examples that I think if employers who were on this followed, I think they would stand them in good stead to be a really, really good employer. And, some of those examples from Cheryl, if you're in doubt about what you need to do, just copy some of what Electricity Northwest are doing, because they're clearly doing it very, very well. And, that's shown in what Cheryl said. But, the feedback I get from our trade unions about Electricity Northwest is, is a good place to work that recognises and values the staff. And that's, I think, the least we could ask for as trade unions.
Jay, that's fantastic. A really clear message about policies. I think the issue you picked up as well was that by monitoring stuff that happens in the workplace informs those policies and enhances them, and having a collective voice to represent the workforce around those issues and pick up those issues is a real key part of this dynamic, and how that feeds into the policies and the development of them. I think one thing I think is interesting, particularly with the rise of long COVID, and we're seeing that throughout all workplaces now, is that transition piece. So, there I was, bouncy, fit, healthy, doing everything I could for the workplace 2 years ago, and now I've come back in and I'm like, I'm not the same person. How do we manage that transition? Has anybody got experience, or how do we even pick up that transition? It doesn't have to be long COVID either. It could be any condition that comes on in later life, and there is a transition phase and a loss of confidence probably. I mean, we've had a number of webinars and events around the menopause, Cheryl, and that whole kind of loss of confidence part that comes through that phase in life. And it's like, well, how do we recognize it, support those transition phases as we age, as we get older?
I think there's something, just to come in on that before Cheryl does, sorry, I think there's something in having that conversation with your staff who are experiencing that, talking to them about what it is they'd like to see. Those who've been through it, unfortunately, someone or some staff are going to be the first people to go through this and have to have the conversation about, maybe where they felt the employer wasn't there. And that can happen, honestly. Employers cannot give all of the support someone expected or wanted or needed. Honestly, they're not trying to prevent giving it. They just sometimes can't. They just sometimes make mistakes. That occurs. But having that honest dialogue, and I think long COVID is going to be the next one, as you say, in managing that will be different for all people. And I give an example. The TUC produced a charter called Dying to Work. And it come about because a woman, Jackie, in the Midlands, had a really difficult time when she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And some people, would think that when they have a terminal illness, you worry it's not life, but you still got to go to work. You still got to pay your bills. You've still got to manage, the rest of your life for however long that might be. And for some, that is longer than others. And my reaction to that might be different than somebody else on this chat if they experience, that dreaded news. And I think it's about making sure the employer, and on our charter on this is just that the employer is honest and upfront about staff to say, we will support you, that you won't need to worry about your job. You get that news, the first concern shouldn't be about whether you're going to be getting paid at the end of the month. It's the practical things an employer will say they will do. But, the overarching thing to that is we've got a policy and we will support you properly. And I think long COVID and things like that, menopause, these are all good examples about where the employer recognises there's an issue for its staff and says, we will support you with this. We will help you. And you do that in conversation and in dialogue with your employees.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jay. Cheryl, did you want to come in?
Yeah. Just to I fully echo what Jay says. So I think it's definitely listening to your employees, because, like you say, what one experience is, somebody may have a different experience. What we're finding is our colleague resource groups are helping us to do that, because actually it gives voice to people in a group. So it gives them a platform where they're more confident to share. And actually, when you hear, there's something in that power of sharing, when you hear somebody else share, you want to share too. You know what I mean? And that collective voice together is helping us as a business to try really understand, well, what are the challenges? Talk to us about what that feels like, maybe when you're transitioning into work and you may have been off for a period of time. What's the things that would really make a difference? So we're really relying on our colleagues to help us shape what we do. The other thing I think is about raising awareness. I think it's knowledge. So, when you work in an industry that at the minute, our dynamic is 75% male, there may not be a lot of knowledgeable team leaders about the menopause, for example. You know what I mean? And so it's about raising that awareness. And again, it comes back to our colleague resource groups. They're helping us to shape, what does that raising awareness piece look like? Okay, who is our target audience? Who's the people who's going to benefit from this knowledge the most? You know what I mean? And who's going to help you the most with this? So, you know, they're showing that, you know, they feel like there's a big awareness piece around our managers and how we help open conversations. So a female coming back and having to talk about symptoms about menopause, you know, when chances are a boss may be male as well, how do we open that safe space, that dialogue for people to come in and you know, kind of not be embarrassed or not feel like they're going to get judged in any way? So I think I fully support what Jay says. It just is about listening and helping raise that awareness.
And it does come back to these core management skills that we need right across the organizations. Kim, I wanted to come to you because I know we've had a conversation about language and imagery in a workplace around age. So it would be useful just if you could quickly share some of your thoughts around that.
Well, as an organisation, Centre for Ageing Better is really keen to challenge, if you like, imagery around age. We have a free image library for anybody to download because it is a really tricky space. And it's very easy to drop into language and humour which marginalises people around age and not even realise you're doing it. So I think this whole thing, I quite like that conversation that we had earlier on about having champions and creating voice. I think creating voice for your organisation around the agenda is really important, and having the confidence to call people out for maybe using something that they think is okay, but isn't, is quite important. So we would say that in terms of looking at your strategy and in terms of putting in place the actions in the toolkit, don't do it unilaterally. I mean, to be honest, do something. So if there's only one thing you can do, I'm not going to say don't do that one thing. But if you really can, if you're a big enough organisation with the capacity, think about the thing in the round and think about tackling ageism and culture first, and think about the language of your organisation and the images of your organisation, and just open up that conversation. I think the last piece we've had, actually, the last piece of conversation we've had about health is at the heart of the whole thing. Is create a safe space for people to talk. Don't tell old people or older workers what they should think. Actually, if you can, get older workers to champion this for your organisation. There's nothing annoys me more than somebody that just creeps over 50 and tells me in my mid-60s what older workers want. I'll tell you what older workers want, thank you. And you know, I think when we talked about the health thing and the long COVID thing, actually, it made me think about one of the real big challenges in your organisation is women returners from maternity leave. When you come back from maternity leave into an organisation, it's a huge thing. And you often see people that were brilliant performers before they had mat leave, particularly if it's the first child, and they come back and they are totally disoriented. And within 6 months, the organisation and they have coped with that and they're back in that organisation. And I think that's the same thing about age. Look at some of the lessons you've learned about changes that have gone before and apply them to the age piece in terms of imagery and language. Because some of the ways that we used to deal with women in mat leave are just untenable in an organisation now, partly because there's more protection, actually. And I would like to see more policy and protection around some of these things. But at the minute, it isn't there. Whether it's there or not, whether there's policy and protection, the world of work is changing. Your workforce is getting older. You need to live with that and exploit it, because there are not the young people coming through that you can recruit. So start to think about your organisation and your labour market in a way that fits the people, that the demographics of where you live, because that's what's happening, whether you like it or not.
Thanks, Kim. That's great. I've just been distracted a little bit just at the end there with some really good comments that are coming in. There's a question here for Cheryl, actually, about how sensitively you approach older workers about being a mentor for younger staff without making the colleague feel targeted because of their age. So have you got a view on that?
We've not really come across that, because actually I think our older workers just feel valued and respected. And a lot of our older workers have got long tenure as well. So I think, and there's this real passion for like wanting to pass on the mantle, if you like, and help create that future workforce as well. And our older generation take real responsibility in doing that, that they know at some point they're going to be retiring, and they want to make sure that their skills and their knowledge is passed on. So we've not really had any, but we've done this for a long time with our apprenticeships, quite a few years. And I think it's
it probably depends on the individual as well and how you talk to them. I mean, I think being a bit older is cool. And it's quite nice being able to, have that little bit of experience that you can share. So no, I think it depends on the individual. The great idea that Margaret's come up with is, and it was one of the questions I had written down, we often get experience from large organizations like Electricity Northwest, but we know 85% of the business base in Greater Manchester is SMEs, and many of them are micros. So how do we transfer some of that knowledge into the smaller organizations? And Margaret's idea is something we're actually doing a little bit. We've got a share and learn program. So Margaret, if you are a supporter, do contact us, and we'll get you on the share and learn cohort program, and we can have a discussion around age friendly with other SMEs who are going through a similar process. So by all means, we're up to engage with you on that. So that's something that we have started in the last couple of months, but something that we hope to continue on a range of different subjects. These conversations go always so quickly, and we're hard against time now, really. So has anybody got anything else that they would like to add to the conversation? Any last thoughts before I say, look, again, thank you, Kim. It's always great to work with you, and great to have your insight and knowledge. Cheryl, amazing to see the practical stuff that's going on in Electricity Northwest. And Jay, as always, straight to the point, mate. And you got the key actions, I think, and the culture stuff came through from all of you really strongly. So I think that's the kind of message that we need to take away, to reflect on the cultures of our organizations, make sure that they are set in the right way, informed by the right values. And I think also the key message about making sure our managers are up to delivering on those values and cultures. So amazing. Thank you so much. If you are interested at all in this agenda, go find the toolkit on our website. It is a great piece of resource. We do have other toolkits, as I say, on the website, including around flexible work and mental well-being. So again, avail yourself of those. And if you haven't yet signed up to be a supporter of the Charter, damn well do so. It's great to have you all. Thank you very much. And till the next time, bye-bye.